Hello and welcome back to the MaxTalks Podcast. This is a massive day for us because we have our first non-football related guest on. It's George, joined by Max and Toby, the Bard, from Bardic Tales.
Enchanté.
Enchanté. How are we doing, my darling? How are we?
Yeah, not bad. A few technical difficulties to start off with. Managed to instantly break my laptop cable in the process of trying to put everything together. But other than that, fine. How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
All good.
So we're here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So for our viewers that don't know, could you give a brief description of what Dungeons and Dragons is?
Yeah, Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game. So think things like, for comparison, think things like games like Skyrim or kind of films like Lord of the Rings or books of those kind of things. Even things so far as like the Discworld series, Terry Pratchett, that kind of thing. It's basically usually set in a fantasy environment where you roll dice to decide the outcome of actions you endeavour to do. So players make a character and they kind of follow a story that's set by the person known as the Dungeon Master, who kind of makes the world and tells the story around it. So it's kind of like a team-based game for like problem-solving, fighting monsters, saving princesses, saving the world, that kind of deal.
Zelda.
And lots
yeah,
of
kind of
fun along
Zelda's
the way.
another great example of it. All these kind of things are very much based off the idea of it. So I think it was the 70s, a guy called Gary Gygax came up with the idea of it. But very much a lot of the kind of formatting of the way we do games now are based off that kind of idea. So that's starting out in a lower level and slowly accruing, allies, weaponry, magic, information, whatever, and building your power till you can defeat the kind of big bad at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So
No, go on, George.
What got you into it? What got you into D&D?
Actually, my friend Ed, it was just I was just invited to come along, and I remember at the time I was sitting there, I was like, oh god, I've heard about Dungeons and Dragons before. Like in my head, it drums up this image of a person, he's got a neck beard, he smells bad. It turns out he is real. His name's Paul. I met him at that first session. In fact, he was not a good person to be around. But so I went to this group which is run in a game shop that sell like dice and everything ranging from like war game figures to Pokemon cards to all that kind of stuff and dice and Dungeons and Dragons. And they run this. On certain nights, people can come in and kind of play these games. They run nights for that. So I got invited to one of those by my friend, and the first experience I ever had of it, I actually didn't like it. I wanted to be a pirate. I'd recently watched Pirates of the Caribbean, and yeah, I was asked to come play this game.
What did you end up being in that session? So
I was a pirate. I did put my foot down, but it kind of I came in halfway through someone else's game. I was in there for a little bit, and it literally was like this castle siege, and there was enemies that were just unkillable. And then everyone was arguing about rules for a bit, and then it was kind of game over. It was really, really shit. But that's kind of the worst side of it. Is the first thing I saw, and then I decided I wasn't going to go again, and my friend kind of persuaded me. He was like, just give it one more go. We're going to do a group we're making our own group. Come play. You'll enjoy it. So I thought I'd give it another shot, and this time it was awesome. He was running it. I made a little halfling, which is a hobbit if you don't want to get sued by Tolkien, druid guy, and just kind of run around, bumbling around, running in taverns and stealing things and all kinds of the same thing that everyone does the first time they play these games. Get up to mischief, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The thing is,
which is very good fun. So it suddenly changed from my first experience, it was this very rule heavy, everyone kind of being a bit up themselves about how to play it and what's the best way to do things and really kind of being there for themselves and nothing else, to joining a game that was suddenly with a load of people that were there to enjoy themselves together and just have a laugh and kind of play this collaborative game. So yeah.
It was quite a as George has told me plenty of times, you know, he'll come round with like Nathan and you and a few others, and like you have a couple of drinks or something, and it's kind of like a nice social occasion, but you're just playing a game. But
yeah, pretty much.
Like kind of role playing almost.
Yeah, it's got that same kind of vibe as, you know, you have your mates come around and all play Mario Kart together or whatever. It's that same kind of idea. But it kind of there's something that comes with it, which is when it's really hard to describe actually. It's kind of because of the free flowing nature of it and the openness to do basically anything. You know, if you think of something, you can do it. In a video game, you're kind of trapped by a list down of options of what your character can do in response to something. In this, you can do literally anything, and so that comes with a great level of comedy. Obviously, people just doing stupid things and finding great answers.
George is laughing because he's told me so many stories where he's just done crazy shit. And like ruined the whole game. Killed himself.
So for reference, Toby was my dungeon master, and we had a group of people.
So explain what the dungeon master is.
The dungeon master, as I said earlier, is the person who kind of runs the game. So where the players play their character and kind of make their way through. They're like the adventurers. They're your Gandalfs. They're your Frodo. They are your fellowship. They kind of are the people that move through and save the world. The dungeon master is the world designer. So either that you can buy module books already, which have got stories set out and kind of tell you how to run it, or a lot of people write their own. I like to do a bit of both. But yes, the dungeon master's kind of, I guess, I control the NPCs, or the dungeon master controls the background characters, the bar people, the brigands on the road, the weather, everything really.
Literally everything. Go on, George. Just explain that story.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's not as difficult as it is.
The talk about freedom. Where our party decided to burn down 3 places. You would have thought we'd learned, but no. 3 places in a row. Burnt down a town, burnt down half a town, burnt down a forest.
Yeah, it was an eventful few sessions. It was a series of kind of either intentional or unfortunate events. But yeah, again, it was a solution to a problem. So the burning down the town was an outcome I created as the dungeon master to an event that the players had done. So they were in a scenario where they needed to find a way out. Basically, there was a mobster, a kind of gang boss kind of guy who had them in a difficult situation, and in order to get their way out of that situation, they decided to fake their own death. And in doing so, they set fire to a warehouse and kind of set it up so they would die in the fire and no one would look for them and they could disappear scot-free. What they didn't think about, of course, is that fires spread, and we've already said in the way that this industrial area they were in was very tightly packed. So they disappeared off through the sewers, scot-free, everything's fine. And session ends and everyone's really happy and excited. It's all gone brilliantly. Yeah! Next session, of course, I start the game by not letting them be their characters. I don't give them their character sheets, I keep it. And I make them play as a small family that live in an attached house near that district. And they wake up and their house is on fire. And so they have to try and find their way out. Because I wanted to give them consequences for their actions. I wanted to understand if you do something, well, it has an effect on the world.
This is what happens to the Johns who live down this road, because you set fire to this place. They are now struggling.
So once they finish that, we then cut back to their characters, and they're running off scot-free. And so there's now, the guards, the equivalent of the police are chasing after them. They've got descriptions of people. They know where they were. Like, it's all falling apart a bit. So yeah, that's that kind of. It was a very clever solution to a problem, but it then came with something else, and that's how that story kind of develops, grows, and you kind of build it together. It's that I, as a dungeon master in that example, didn't know they were going to do that. No.
See, in a weird way, you could write a story, like an actual book, based off of some of these events you've had playing D&D.
Absolutely.
100%.
And vice versa. So, for example, you know Vin Diesel?
Yeah.
He's an avid D&D player.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. And he recently, a little while ago, he made a film, his name escapes me currently, it's not The Witcher. That's the great show.
Or was it Riddick that he did? Or
no, Witch Hunter or something like that. Anyway, he made a film recently, a little while back, and yeah, that was entirely based on his D&D character.
That's brilliant.
So it does kind of go both ways.
That is brilliant.
That is mental. So you've obviously started playing D&D. Have you played any other TTRPGs?
I have, yeah. So I've played some other tabletop role-playing games before. I've played there's ones like Pathfinder, which is very similar to D&D, because there's different editions that have come along as games. A particular favourite of the fans was the 3.5 edition, and when they moved on to 4th and 5th, some people didn't like that change, and a few people that wanted to kind of stick with the system that was in place in 3.5 made their own game called Pathfinder, which is very similar. There's also in the same world, there's something called Starfinder, which I've had a play at, which is basically the same thing. If you think your medieval fantasy worlds, you know, your goblins and your elves and everything else and your dwarves, but then they take that and set it in the future from that time. So you end up with this science fiction flying through planets and spaceships and stuff, but it also still has elves and orcs and goblins and all that kind of magic and inspiration. Played a game called Call of Cthulhu, which is a firm favourite, which is essentially kind of like Lovecraftian. Yeah, it's like Lovecraftian style horror, basically. Eldritch terrors and nightmares and all that come to life.
That sounds a bit like me.
It's wicked. They have different sections. That they have sanity as a score in that, and when you see awful things, your sanity is damaged, and eventually your character can just go insane, which is again very good fun. So there's all kinds of weird ones like that. From that then there's also ones that people make which are really simple. So these ones have a lot of dice and mechanics and stuff like that. Whereas there's one called You're All Going to Die, or We're All Going to Die. And basically, every character is going to die. Every player is going to lose except for one. And your goal is to make sure you're the one that survives. And
so the dungeon kind of like a battle royale of
kind of, yeah. But you'll have to work together as well, because if you all go at each other, you won't make it to the end and everyone will die. So it's kind of good. And as the game master for that, your job is to kind of make everyone believe they're the survivor. So everyone acts as if they are the survivor first. But it gets drawn at the very beginning. So we had it with a hat with names in it. We take a name out. Now I know who wins the game. He goes in my pocket, and then we play the entire game for hours. And that can obviously be broken by, you know, if I was the survivor and I stepped in front of a bullet, I'm going to die. But whoever I saved behind me becomes the survivor. And then it just snowballs until there's only one person left. And it always ends up there's 2 people left, and then there's just this panic for both of them to try and survive outside. Then there's one that use completely different systems entirely. So there's one called, I think it's called Dread, where basically you use a Jenga tower. And every time you do anything slightly risky, you have to take a Jenga block. If you make the tower fall, you die. And then they put the block back up and the game continues. So it's kind of, there's loads of different kind of ways.
For someone who's first starting out, if they were to kind of look into all of these kind of games, would you say like these ones you've just spoken about, like Dread and things like that, they're the ones you should probably start on? Or would you just say go straight into D&D and the more complex, more dice kind of games?
It's a good question. So realistically, it doesn't matter. The systems you pick up and everyone around you, if you're with a good group, everyone's going to teach you, kind of hold your hand the way through it, and it's really quick to pick up. It doesn't take long. Don't get me wrong, you still have to every now and again remind yourself which dice is which, because you have 7 different polyhedral dice. But realistically, as long as the essence that you've got there is, I'm here to play a game and have fun with my friends and whatever else, the rest of it really doesn't matter. It's kind of why it's become such a big thing recently, is because it fits really well for the podcast medium. So a lot of podcasts and people who were doing previous podcasts beforehand now do Dungeons and Dragons ones, because it's a very Yeah, as you were saying earlier, it's like a story. It's a story.
Yeah.
And when you're having fun and making up with your mates, it's the perfect thing to listen to.
And you can most certainly sit there for an hour or two and listen to these stories.
Yeah, for sure.
I certainly would be interested in like overhearing some of you two's ones that you've done.
Hey man, you should come play.
I should. I
some benches, mate. Come play in.
I definitely will.
You create a character.
I have to give it a go.
So, Toby, just start him off light and let's just jump him straight in with the Curse of Strahd.
Curse of Strahd. Okay, so I love Curse of Strahd. So there are, I mentioned earlier, there's lots of different books that you can get that are by Wizard Coast. I think we make the Dungeons and Dragons games. You can get modules or these stories that are already set out from them. My personal favourite is Curse of Strahd, which is basically where you have, for the main part, most adventures, they're very much that kind of, The Witcher is another great example, that slowly watching the character develop and then big bad at the end, fight, defeat, victory, yay. Strahd's very different in that you are trapped somewhere with a vampire lord overlooking you. It's based off of Dracula, like Bram Stoker style, old school horror Dracula. So your villain ain't hidden from sight. He's there from the very beginning, letting you know you're a piece of shit. He's going to kill you dead. So it's just this awful survival situation where everything just gets, every time you do something, it has some knock-on effect and everything just gets worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like playing The Revenant. It's awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a personal favourite of mine because it's got everything I think makes a good game in it, which is it's got a lot of suspense in it, which is quite fun to play with. Especially I use things like I put music on in the background. I mood light to match games. I have sound effects sometimes if I think that's
so
that'll
you
help.
properly create the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of as you get that slow like dip and everyone paying attention and suddenly something loud happens and you actually see, like, even though it's only in a game and you're all just sitting there with pencils, paper, dice, but you can see everyone at the table jump back in like what's happening. It's quite a gratifying feeling to get that. But yeah, that Strahd von Zarovich, and just every time something you think you've got some edge, he shows up and ruins it for you, or someone else you trusted completely in his pocket, and it's just this monotonous grind against it, ranging from difficult monsters to fight like mechanically within the game to, like it tells you in the book, at one point you're moving through this like path and there's an old gallows, and as you walk by it just says, oh, whoever's got the highest passive perception, which is like noticing things around you, turns back and sees themselves hanging from the gallows. So it's just like psychologically trying to have a crack at your players as well. Like it's a very fun kind of development.
Yeah. See, it does remind me a lot of the Fable games. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, Fable games
I used to
really
love playing them.
Oh, good. Fable 2 was my jam, man.
Yeah.
That dog. Chose the dog every time. No spoilers, but dog every time. It's not a question. So actually, really good comparison because you know that whole like if you do bad things, your character looked more evil, and if you worked out loads, they got shredded. If you ate loads of pies, they got bigger. Like that kind of thing is actually a really good comparable to D&D because again, it's that you do something, there is an effect on the world because
there's always a knock-on effect. Yeah.
And because it's something that obviously you write it or you play these games that are set up. There is a back and forth between it, and you have to, as a dungeon master, respond to the players and adapt the world around as they're doing stuff in the same way they have to adapt to what's happening around them. So it's that feedback loop, you know.
No,
so
definitely.
You are the bard, which obviously I know is a class in D&D. I'm not going to make you go through all the classes. We don't have time for that. So. You've set up an Instagram page for D&D lovers. Can you just tell us about that a bit? What you do on it? Why you've done it?
Yeah, sure. So I set up an account called Bardic Tales, Bardic _Tales on Instagram. Go check it out. Basically, I set it up originally as a tool for myself. I was trying to like collate a few things for a campaign I was running, and I was trying to make a bit more, basically try and make it a bit easier for myself in game. So, for example, when you're moving your players through a wilderness, there may be something in the wilderness that jumps out and attacks. And to try and think of these things on the fly can be a bit daunting or take a bit of time. Or if you have to sit down every time you want to run one of these encounters and plan it in advance, it can take quite a bit of time out of like the overall story you're trying to put together. But they are important to have those things in there because it makes the whole thing feel a bit more real. So I started making these tables for myself, which basically you roll a dice and it gives you an answer. So I know they're moving through a forest. I'll write 20 different things that could happen in the forest, and while we're playing the game, I just roll the dice and I know what's happened. And it just narrowed that time down for me because I only had to do it once. And from there on out, it was really easy to do it. So I started writing these and putting them on this Instagram so that I just had somewhere I could find them quickly and see them. And then in conjunction with that, I did a few things which was monsters I was going to use and wrote a few extra bits in the bio. I did a bit of research on the monsters, posted the pictures and wrote these extra bits I put in, a bit of extra lore or a bit of interesting backgrounds or something like that. Again, to try and bring these things to life a bit more, to make them less like you're sitting at a table rolling chunks of plastic around. And it started getting some followers and people started to like it. So I thought, okay, cool, so I'll start doing these things. So I did a few more of the ones I was really doing, a few more encounters, and then I started getting requests from people. I was like, okay, well, I can do a few requests, it's not a problem. So I started doing some things that people wanted. And then I suddenly had, I found myself within a few months with a couple of thousand followers. I was like, all right, that's interesting. So I started asking if anyone had any specific requests, putting it out there for other people. And then I started collating them into closer things. I started doing them by organising them by, types of tables. So NPCs, which is non-player characters. It's all your background people, your market sellers, your just random people in the street, your bartenders, your whoever. So I started grouping all the ones I'd done with that together, and then I did, any magic tables I'd done, I grouped them together, and again, it just started snowballing, kind of got faster and faster, and then I don't know, it just kind of got where it is now. I don't really know what happened. It blew up, it did. So I'm now sitting on 25.8 thousand followers, which is kind of nuts to verbalise, really.
So does anyone actually know it's you other than your close friends and family?
No, I think it's quite secret. It's not really. It never meant to be a secret, but because it was this it started off just kind of the Bard. They are the storytellers of the world. The ones who tell the stories that others live, and it kind of seemed apt at the time that if I was writing these tables for other people to use, that I was telling stories that they were living, if that made sense. So I became the Bard, and it was the Tales of the Bard. And again, it was just a kind of whatever, it's just to get a handle at the beginning, and then it just kind of became this thing. People started addressing me as the Bard, and then people send me messages kind of almost written in their characters, which is quite a strange thing to get as well.
That's very odd.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. Then I ended up getting other people kind of asking me to do collabs. I've had suddenly I found myself with dice companies that I'd wanted dice from ages, sending me messages asking me to write bios for monsters they were creating to sell with their dice.
Wow.
And I had a company called that was Beholder's Gaze is the name of them. They make some really pretty dice.
Oh, their dice.
It's so good. So they did some good versus evil. They made their own dice that were kind of similar colour palettes, and they made monsters for each one. And they asked me to write the bios for those monsters. So that was really good fun. I had another person, there's a group called Vengadex, which have started making encounter cards. The same kind of idea as these roll tables, but they do it with cards. So you have a deck of cards and you draw them and flip them over with the encounters on there, which is really clever. I wish I'd thought of it. But they've got this thing called the Party, which is their already pre-built characters that you can use if you've never played before to just kind of grab and run with, which is a really good idea. But they asked me to write the bios and backstories of those characters in the party, which was really fun to do as well. So it's kind of this weird thing, and then it's ended up falling into this community of other people and creators online. And it's just, it's been very good fun. It has been really good fun. It's kind of, again, it's a really weird thought process. It's kind of, you never think that something like that's going to happen,
No.
It's like something I was just doing because the only reason I had had time to do this because my girlfriend had gone away to work for a week and I felt lonely. You know what I mean? Like, just found myself with way too much time. Yeah.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here, and I've started writing books, which is really good fun. I've written a module, or a module. It's not a module. It's a short story. It's a one shot, we call them, which means it's a story that's self-contained. You do it one night or one session, start to finish. You kind of jump in and out, as opposed to something that runs for years or months or whatever. So I wrote one of those called Toil and Trouble, which is essentially a tower climb, and everything's gone terribly wrong. A gnome has had a terrible accident, and you kind of need to go solve it. Meanwhile, random magic is causing mutations and chaos all around you, which is very good fun. I enjoyed writing that, and I've had some good responses from it.
That's brilliant.
And now I've started writing using these tables I was doing before, because obviously it's what people wanted or kind of followed me for in the first place. I started writing some books, which are essentially those but organised better. So the ones I'm writing at the moment are one that's basically a tavern generator. So if you want to make a tavern for your players to turn up in, there's basically loads of different things. So from a name generators to kind of work out what the name of your tavern would be, to who's running it, to that kind of thing. And that's kind of based off, again, different roll tables. So you just roll dice to determine what's happening. I mean, I've actually got that particular one on me. Hold on, give me one sec. There you go, Max. Why don't you make a tavern name with me? So I use a D100 for this particular one. So we'll pick between 1 and 100. I've got 3 different name generators. Let's just go for, it doesn't matter one of them. Which one have we got? Number 2. Okay, so this one's called the descriptive noun. So you roll 2 sets of dice, or you're going to pick 2 numbers, and by adding them together, you generate this name. So this is going to be a tavern name generator. We're going to make you a name, Max. Give me a number between 1 and 100.
57.
57, and one more?
72.
So yours is called the Polymorph Nothic, is the name of your tavern. Hey. So it's just this list of, there you go, the Polymorph Nothic. So it's just a list of kind of D&D related things.
It just makes it easier for everyone else.
That's kind of the idea.
And also, I always think random name generators just come up, obviously, with the most random names. And to have the most random name for a tavern is actually quite funny.
Well, that's the kind of thing. You end up with all kinds of weird mixes. The thing is, the second you get that name, the idea of it is to spark inspiration. So, I'm thinking Polymorph Nothic, which I know probably is a weird example for this specific we're talking about. I don't actually know what those words mean. Polymorph is a spell that you change person from one to another, and Nothic monster. But if we end up with something like, I don't know, the Ring and Raven, as you add those words together, you're now suddenly thinking, okay, what do I think the Ring and Raven would look like? Okay, is it that there's exposed rafters in the top that's full of ravens and crows and other corvids? And do they only trade in silver? Or, is there an underground jewellery kind of thing that's happening in the background of there that's like illegal goods moving through it, and that's where the ring comes from. And it kind of, the whole idea is to spark some kind of inspiration in the person rolling the dice and reading the book, and then they can then go and make something with it. So it's almost like a way of finding a way around writer's block.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a great way for it. 100%.
Yeah, it is, and it's awesome to see helpful. Yeah, it is, and it's awesome to see what you're doing with it as well. Obviously, the Patreon and Toil and Trouble. Obviously, myself playing it. The start of it, and it was fantastic. The start of it was fantastic. Where can you see it going? Like, where can you see it go? Do you want the Bard to be a big thing? You just be known as the Bard rocking up at Comic-Con?
Maybe. I don't know. It's one of maybe if I was asked, probably. But like, it's one of those things that's like, I never really planned for it to do what it's done. I didn't really think ahead when I started doing it. So I don't really know. I'm kind of just in for the ride. Realistically, what I want to do with it is what it's already doing, which is helping people run their games. Like, I really like the idea of being that tool,
How long ago was it that you started it?
Say again?
How long ago was it that you started this account?
I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, somewhere in that area. I'm not entirely sure now.
So just
yeah.
going with it, going with the flow, and you've got this far. I just think that's extremely
pretty much.
And I think that's kind of like for us, especially just starting out with this podcast, I think that's kind of just see where it goes. Something good comes out of it, brilliant. If nothing, as long as you're having fun with it, which you obviously are.
Kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's that relay, isn't it? Which is so it was noting what people liked and what people wanted, and kind of running with that. Because there was obviously, when I started doing it, there was obviously, I'm not saying a market for it, but there was obviously a want for what I was creating. Like people wanted to have these sparks, these inspirational notes, these tables. They were helping people. So using that and running with it and then taking the requests is kind of what led it to where it is now. And right, it's not, I'm quite a creative mind naturally. I'm quite gifted in that area, which allows me to make these things. But even my doing it comes from inspiration of other people giving, like asking for what they want, or seeing where, playing the game and then hearing someone ask a question and go, actually, that's really good. The thing that always got me is when people, actually George was a sod for it. Anytime anything happened, pickpocketing someone randomly, or if you've killed a guard, what's in their pocket? You suddenly go, I don't know. I didn't think about what would be in this one random fucking guard's pocket. I didn't think you'd kill them. I don't know. Off the top of my head, think about what this person might have on them for you to rob. So again, creating that table allowed me to just go, good question, roll the dice, there you go, that's what you get.
You've got it. Yeah,
exactly, it made it easier. So again, imparting that on other people, and that spark that came from one place to the next, and
So is George a pain to play with?
Oh, he's not a pain. No, he's not a pain at all. Actually, he's very creative.
Yeah.
Very good at finding answers I didn't know would be an answer. And again, my job as a DM is to reward that.
Yeah.
It's important to, when you see someone do something creative or clever, is to be a part of it. It's very much like kind of like improv acting and that kind of thing. It's yes and. That's really good. Okay, how can I run with this? And even if you didn't think originally that would be an answer as a DM, if they've been really clever about it, then it's an answer. Like it's there. So make it work. Because the whole point is, again, we are all here trying to have fun together and enjoy a game. Like I'm not trying to win against the players. They're not trying to win against me. We're trying to enjoy ourselves together. So it's that really good fun. And like, it comes in all sides of it, because you can have the best laid plans in all the world. You roll a dice, and if it says 1, you're done fucked up, son. Like it's not working. You have the weirdest ideas in all the world, and you roll the dice because it's possible, and you roll really high, and hey, this one works. Who knows? And that kind of fun building of it is what creates these memorable moments. So it's what makes it a fun game to play. It's what makes it. It's what I do it for.
Yeah. And obviously, like you talk about the blunders. Can you just go through one of your biggest ones? So your natural ones. So natural ones and natural 20s. I'll give a bit of insight into this. Natural 1 is you've completely fucked it. Like you are. This is a big mistake. Why are you doing this? Natural 20 is basically you're the best thing that's happened since sliced bread in this category for a second.
Yeah, it's that moment of perfect action, moment of complete failure. So you can be trying to do something, and so for those who don't know, the 1 and 20 is basically the main dice used in Dungeons and Dragons is 20-sided dice. And the highest number being 20, lowest being 1, and they represent your critical successes and failures, and it's done on a grading scale. Mike, do you mean, so when you say me,
yeah. So you
as a player, or
as a player, not as a player, as a player.
Okay, so greatest failures, greatest successes. Greatest failure.
He Who Fell is a good one. But...
Say again?
He Who Fell is a good one.
He Who Fell. Oh, that wasn't mine. That was a player of mine. But I will. That was very good. I will do that one now, and then I'll tell you the other bit afterwards. The He Who Fell. So I've been making this as a DM. I've made this campaign there was all basically a series of fetch quests, which is go find me this, go find me that. And the players were working as agents for this wizard who was trying to save the world. They needed these ingredients to do so. To cast an almighty spell to protect the world from the coming of dragons, another age. All the way through, I was laying all these very kind of obvious but hidden and convoluted hints that this guy was no good. And they were picking up on that. So I started making it a bit heavier that's, he's no good, but you don't know that. And they think they're really clever getting the whole way through this. In the background, I start sewing a secondary storyline as this dark force in the background is slowly growing and growing and growing. And it wasn't until the end that they twigged and everything falls into place. So they're who they think is the big bad, and they think they've already cracked it. Turns out to be the big bad, and suddenly the bigger bad kills them in one shot. And they have to fight a proper monster. It was the avatar of a god. Now, obviously, fighting a god is no easy feat. And this particular god was continuously changing form and whatever else. I actually, as it happened, very much like you said, there was someone who was sitting in the game and they weren't playing. They told me it's the first time they wanted to come and watch. And I went, no one sits and watches, come play. So I gave them control of the villain, basically, of the monster.
Oh, wow.
Which was essentially every time they went to do something, I went, what would you like to do to mess these people up? Because this person, this deity, this god was basically limitless in power, and this person had no idea what the rules of the game were, which meant they would think limitlessly in power.
Yeah.
So when they said, can I turn into the same temperature as the surface of the sun? I said, yes, of course you can, not a problem. Can I reverse gravity? I went, of course you can, not a problem. When they went, can I bring the moon down out of orbit and smash it on them? I went, might take a few rounds, but we can give it a go. So slowly building, and one of our players had this idea, and he thinks he's very clever, and he's managed to get all the characters flying, casting spells on them. It's this epic showdown's happening, and lightning's cracking, the earth is erupting beneath them, and this one guy's character, a really good friend of mine, Lawrence, it was so funny, he had started flying up and up and up and up and up. And we were like, what is he doing? And in the back of my head, I go, I've got an idea as to what he's doing. He's flying higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. What the hell is he doing? I said, okay, I worked it out. He gets to the top, and he decides what he's going to do is he's going to cancel the fly spell, so he falls. And he's flown, 500 feet up in the air. And this, weirdly, you should roll it earlier, polymorph, which is a spell to transform oneself into something else or someone into something else, himself into a giant whale. His idea was basically to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this thing, and come down as a huge creature and splat the bugger. Unfortunately, of course, traveling this kind of distance takes time. And in the meanwhile, all his compadres are fighting down the bottom, fighting. And this man's falling, fighting. And they kill it. At the bottom, they manage to bring down the hit points, great explosion, final battle, crowd folk go wild. And he's dead, he's gone. And suddenly, 2 seconds later, wham! The whale hits the ground, explodes into nothingness, and has sacrificed himself for no reason. And it's because he cancelled the fly as opposed to just dropping and keeping it on and going back, couldn't stop it. Because he turned into a whale, he was moving too quick to stop himself. He couldn't land, like it was just nothing he could have done. It was the last moment. So this great, amazing, epic battle that had gone on for months, and it's growing story of heroes and villains, ended with one of the players accidentally destroying themselves. They were unhappy, It was a very weird moment. Just weird shit happening.
That is such a comical moment. That is so...
It's the biggest thing as well, because you get so
brilliant, though.
When I see it as images of that happening. Like, my memory doesn't find me and my mates sitting at a table. My memory finds fuck off whale landing and exploding. That's a picture
That's
I get
what
in my head.
I was thinking of. I'm picturing like Mordor, and then just a whale falls after the battle's done.
That's exactly the kind of thing. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Landing in the great towers of Isengard or whatever like this.
Yeah.
Just going crazy around it and just.
Oh.
So, yeah,
Oh my god.
and still find it funny now. Imagine playing it, being there, and just suddenly out of nowhere that's happening. And again, these kind of things happen continuously.
Was you there,
on the flip
George?
side,
No.
No,
I've met Lawrence once, but no, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Oh,
on the flip side of it, there's like so the same kind of thing. So that's one where it was a great idea. It probably would have done some serious damage if it worked, and it failed. And that was really funny. And then the successes can be hilarious on the other side. So weirdly, it was the roles were reversed. I was playing, Lawrence was running the game, and it was a one-shot. Few friends there, and we'd found the big bad. These kids were being stolen and taken into the woods. It was all this very creepy, nasty, witchy stuff going on. And when we finally felt the big bad, we had this item on us, which is called a bag of holding. Essentially, it's a small satchel, which think like a TARDIS in Doctor Who. It's bigger on the inside. Yeah. Essentially, a way for you to store your items. If you find a load of chests of gold, you can't drag them out of a dungeon. So they kind of developed this item so that you can carry stuff greater than your weight. However, there are some limitations to it. One of those limitations being a weight limitation. If you extend the weight, it destroys itself. And it has a level of oxygen in it because you couldn't live in there as a pocket dimension. So we got to the big bad, and once again the spell polymorph comes into effect as we managed to turn the big bad into a baby dolphin. We pop them in the bag of holding, seal the top. This big ass monster we just transformed down into this little baby, put in there. Air runs out, big bad returns, dies, and when you die in your form in polymorph, you return to the original form. So they grow back to their giant size, instantly exceeding the weight capacity of the bag of holding, causing the bag of holding to explode, and it scatters all of the contents of the bag to a different plane of existence. So essentially, you just banish the baddies. You know, like I had about an hour's worth of combat. Game over. Sorry, mate. Solved it quickly. So it not only worked because of a series of really good rolls allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
Because there's so many areas where that could have failed. When you're casting polymorph on someone, they have to roll to save against it. And genuinely, these big monsters are very good at fighting those kind of things. So it's all very much luck and chance. I got really lucky in that particular example.
Yeah.
Stupid plan that worked.
It is all just chance. That's what it does seem like, this game. It is very much chance, luck.
Yeah, kind of. It's very much chance, luck, and then with a little bit of skill on top. So, for example, if you as a character are very good with a sword, you'll have some bonuses you add to the roll. So, if you've trained in the sword, or how to pick a lock, or or you're very learned in magics or something like that, you have a certain score added to your character, which you add to your roll. So let's say you're very good at using this sword, so you get +7 to it. So you roll a dice, and if it's, whatever the score on the dice is, you add your +7 to.
Right.
Let's say my character isn't as good with a sword, so I don't have any bonuses. So you and I could both roll a 10, and I'll fail, but you'll succeed, because I got 10 and you got 17. So you have ways of stacking the odds in your favour. But again, that critical failure or that low roll represents that you can be really good at something and still have a bad day. You can be really good at something and still fuck up this one time. Like, that can happen.
Yeah.
What do you think about like the representation of D&D in like normal media, as it's like put, like TV, Big Bang Theory nerds and geeks and stuff like that? I call myself a nerd as well, and I've called myself a nerd on this podcast before. But like, what do you think about that? Yeah, I am a nerd.
It's good. Yeah, me too. It's one of these. It's one of these things. It's very interesting actually, because in some facets it's portrayed really well, and in other places it's not. So, an example of one where it really is Stranger Things. Although it's not exactly as you play it kind of in game. It's very monster appears, one hit, monster's gone. There's a lot more to it. It takes a lot more time in a combat to do that. But the essence that they had there about the players kind of don't know what to do, and the time's running out, and suddenly they all look really panicked, and the music's getting loud behind them, and then everyone's really excited when it all goes well, or really annoyed when it all goes wrong. It's really like it captured the essence of it really well. like the fun of it and the tension of it and the kind of nuances that come with it. On the flip side, you do also get things like the example you made there, the Big Bang Theory, which I have an issue with in general, that show, but that particular scene was very much the idea was we are not laughing with these people's experiences as we all just were about He Who Fell. You know, they're laughing at these people because they play these games and, you know, laughing at Sheldon's autistic, haha. Kind of falls a bit deadpan for me. So it's a kind of difference of whether it's showing, I guess, glorifying or vilifying, really. Whether they are laughing at people playing it because they're nerds and that's something to be poked fun at, or if they're laughing with and enjoying the experience that someone else is enjoying. You know, I'm a big fan of don't have a crack at someone for enjoying things that they love. I, for example, have not the faintest idea about football, but I do know that George really loves it. And so when he's talking about it and really happy about it, yeah, I might give him a jibe or two, but I listen to him and I want him to talk about it and I want him to enjoy what he enjoys.
Yeah.
So I guess as far as that portrayal of media, ups and downs, good and bad. It's kind of an interesting thing. Again, that perception's changing. It was Dungeons and Dragons. I think last year was one of the best-selling games globally.
Wow.
Because this sudden boom in doing things. The revival of the board games are selling amazingly well again. Being around people, I think it's a lot of people kind of our age becoming adults and having a bit of money to spend money on things like this. And what we think is important is quite different to the generation before us. You know, we place a lot of importance on our friends and our mental health and our personal lives and taking time to enjoy each other's company. I think, I might be wrong, but that's kind of something I've observed. And I think that's kind of in conjunction with the podcast medium being really good for it, a bit of it being in you know, social media and TV and stuff like that, and films. And the fact that people have kind of stepped away from taking the mick out of it. You know, once upon a time, people, especially in America, thought that Dungeons and Dragons was like Satanism worshipping. Or
I remember watching like old American films.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always the same. Always kind of, you know, people taking the piss out of the game, and people just looking at them thinking they're the you know, the emo kids, the gothic kids, the kids who are weird. Stay away from them. The
ones who can't talk to girls, the ones who are, you know, not maybe not as socially inept as others, or socially apt, as others. There was very much that weird element of it. You know, for a very long time, I think still in some states in America, it's banned in prisons for several reasons. One, because it's that Satanism crap, and the other one is because they thought they were hiding escape plans inside the game and things like that. So it had this really weird, people didn't know what it was because they didn't understand, they didn't bother trying, and now people have bothered trying and they've stopped shaming people for what they love, and then people are trying new things and having a go at stuff, and suddenly people find it's really good fun. For the same reason when we loved listening to stories from our parents, and we loved reading and disappearing into books, and we loved watching fantasy shows and playing fantasy games, and you know, that same love, but sharing it with your mates is a weird, it's a great feeling, man.
I remember listening to you at the pub, and some guy when we were talking about it, goes, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I said, "Dungeons and Dragons," and he goes, "Oh, that nerd shit." And you went, "My friend, have you seen Lords of the Rings?" He goes, "Oh, I love Lords of the Rings." He goes, "Who's your favourite character then?" "Oh, Legolas." "Bitch, do you want to be Legolas?" Literally, you just said, "Bitch, do you want to be Legolas?"
Dear.
And that was it. You can call me Legolas, man. Pick up a bow, grab a pair of elf ears, let's crack on. Like, I never understood that separation, like that love in one place and kind of fear in another. I do also understand there's that weirdness, you know, for some people it doesn't click. For some people they struggle kind of letting go of maybe what people will judge them about. I know something I thought about originally. I didn't like doing character voices and stuff like that.
Do you think it's kind of... So I was actually going to ask you a question, Toby. I was going to ask you, when you play D&D, is it kind of like, it kind of makes you feel like you're coming out of reality and entering into a new one. And to some people that may seem weird.
Yeah, absolutely. To a degree, it's definitely an escapism. It's a way to do something differently. Whether you know, I'm not sure you really feel like you're in a fancy world, but I would liken it to, you know, when you read a book and after a while you become, you're not really reading anymore. You're watching this event unfold because you just get into the swing of it. It's very much more like that kind of feeling. So yeah, there is a great escapism to it, but because you do it with people you like for the main part, it adds an extra element to it. So yeah, there is. I do find, you know, I've had situations where I've felt really crap I've had a bad day for whatever reason. You know, either I've had some bad news, or I've had a bad day at work, or whatever it is. And then I go play a bit of D&D, and afterwards I feel great, because actually what I've done is I've taken my mind out of this for a while. I've stopped thinking about bills to pay and rent, and I've got to finish that thing for work, and I should really paint this, and I need to make sure the car's taxed, and all these things that you have to think about all the time that sit in the back of the brain. It gives you a moment to just not think about those things anymore. So whether you're escaping into a fancy world, or just giving your brain a break, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. Things to think about. There's a wizard going nuts somewhere, you know. Solve that.
There's a whale falling from the sky. It's like,
yeah, exactly. There's a whale dropping off the sky. Yeah.
So just before we finish, Kurt, just one more question. If people are wanting to get into D&D, I know you're not streaming at the moment, but if they want to get into D&D, do you know a couple of places that they can follow? You know, really good places to get into, you know, where they can go to kind of just get integrated in that community.
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends what level you want to get into it. Obviously, I would always say support your local shops. Local game shops are currently being swamped down by places like Amazon and eBay, and just the online community, the online ordering kind of thing, which obviously it is cheaper to do so. You do normally save a 5 or 10 on a book to do it that way. But realistically, if you want to, support a business which is doing it, which is really important, so they don't kind of go under and we lose that, but also be part of a space, because by going to those places, you meet other people who are also at those shops, and then you find a group to do. So I would first and foremost just say, find out where your closest shop is, closest game shop, and just go have a look. Go pick up a set of dice and go chat to whoever's around you. Find out if there's any groups doing it in those areas. Is a really good way of starting. If you want to check out stuff online, definitely get on Instagram and check out, you know, artists that create things. Check out dice companies. Hey, check out Bardic Tales, right? Like, come have a chat. I'll give you a rundown. Come check out Bardic Tales, man. Send me a message. Like, I want to chat to you. I chat to everyone who messages me, and help people where as best I can. And again, reach out to those creators, because for the main part, the community is really quite wholesome and wants to share the thing they love with others. Check out podcasts. Absolutely check out podcasts. A great one to start off with is...
I was going to say, have you got any names for the podcast? Because I definitely want to start.
Podcast, absolutely. I would check out Adventure Zone, the Adventure Zone. It's they're one of the more well-known ones. Them and Critical Role are kind of the big names in Dungeons and Dragons podcasting for very different reasons. Critical Role is really amazing storytelling and engrossing characters and kind of epic sagas, and it feels very much like listening to an audiobook of Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Whereas Adventure Zone has it's an epic, and it has amazing storytelling and amazing character arcs, but it's really kind of goofy and a bit more cartoonish, and it's got that fun element to it that kind of depends on what kind of thing you're looking for, you know. So those are some really good ones to look at. I would also check out probably...
Dragon Friends.
Dragon Friends, yeah, of course. Definitely Dragon Friends. Again, that's really goofy, but that's a completely different element of it. That's kind of like they actively try and be as goofy as they can and find the stupid solutions and just completely have a laugh with it. They do it live and they all just drink the entire way through it. It's hilarious. And not another D&D podcast, not a great one for that kind of balance of goofy to good. So yeah. But if you just check out, Dungeons and Dragons podcast, like just search that in your podcast engine or whatever, and it will come up with stuff. And, check it out. Find what you like.
Final question: If you were available to, and when we can all sit at a table together, would you do a one shot for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah, I'd love to.
Let's fucking get it on.
In front of your listeners.
Oh, Toby, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah,
fun.
brilliant. I'd love to
It's
do
been
it.
great
I'm
having
good.
you on, Toby. Or should I say Bardic?
Bardic Tales.
Yeah.
The Bard.
The bar.
Enchanté. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, my friend. I love you very much. I will see you soon at the public house.
Looking forward to it. Public house.
This has been the MaxTalks podcast with the one and only Bardic Tales, Toby the Bard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Love
you
each
guys.
other. And good night.
Night.